Hello, everyone. Welcome to In the Corner, the place where every cricketer wants to be. I'm your host, Callum Dunk, and thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Joining me on the show today to talk about Australia's loss to the West Indies is Lewis Dade. Louis, how are you, mate?
Going very well, going very well. Can't say I'm going as well as Shamar Joseph's probably going, but nonetheless, enjoying life all the way.
Yeah, an absolutely amazing day of Test cricket yesterday. Obviously, England getting up over India as well. So lots to talk about on the podcast. We will do the England and India game in a separate video. But Louis, before we get started, we just want to thank our sponsors at T20 Vision. So got the nice shades here from T20 Vision. So um, if you want to look like a cricketing superstar like Glenn Maxwell, make sure that you head over to t20vision.com and get yourself a great pair. These are a very similar pair to what Glenn Maxwell wore in the World Cup. So make sure that you use in the cordon for your 10% discount. So, Louis, it was obviously a big day at the Gabba yesterday with Shamar Joseph putting in one of the greatest performances in West Indies cricketing history. How do you sum it all up? Because it was just extraordinary to watch on the couch.
Yeah, look. Firstly, mad. Looking extra fast at the moment in those sunnies. You're looking like 200 red in a key World Cup game. Take after Glenn Maxwell, 200 not out guaranteed. But the as far as the West Indies, look, wow. I mean, I think most fans went to bed a little bit nervous the night before. Aussie fans, that is. They felt like there was going to be a sense of returning to normality when Smith and Green piled on a decent partnership to start the day. And really, from the moment we lost that quick bunch of wickets, it felt like the West Indies kind of owned the game from that point on. Credit to Steve Smith, Cam Green, and obviously a little bit of a contribution there from Mitch Stark. But wow, Shamar Joseph is really the story. Toe the size of a house, and he's come in and taken 7 for after lighting the first test on fire. So Australia certainly missed their mark in a couple of key areas. I think they'll know that. But this could be the start of a impressive international career for Shamar Joseph and this West Indies team.
Yeah, it's been an absolute joy to watch Samar Joseph throughout this series. And I think it's when the West Indies are performing well, it's so much better for world cricket and particularly Test cricket. Yesterday, watching on the couch, you know, obviously I want Australia to win because they're my home country and all that. But at the same time, you couldn't help but admire the performance of this young 24-year-old who 3 years ago was only just getting discovered, bowling with fruit in the jungles of Guyana. So it's an absolute fantastic achievement, and it just leads into his success is 5 wickets in Adelaide, wicket first ball in Test cricket, 7 wickets here. You just think that this kid is going to be something special. And I know he's come out and said that he doesn't want to particularly pursue T20 opportunities, but with performances like that, he's going to have IPL clubs and franchises really, scouting him hard over the next 12 months. And I'm sure he will get some opportunities, but for the hope of and the sake of West Indies cricket, you certainly hope that he sticks around for a long time and eventually becomes a leader of that attack. Louis, I just wanted to ask you, there were 4 debutants for the West Indies in this particular series. Justin Greaves, Shamar Joseph, who we've touched on, um, Kevin Hodge as well, and Kevin Sinclair. All of those players certainly showed something throughout this series. Other than Shamar Joseph, which of the 3 debutants from the West Indies really stood out to you?
So I think in the long run, I think it's got to be. I think it's got to be Kirk McKenzie. As far as Hodge obviously looked, I think quite compact in his innings. His 71 at the, at the Gabba. That first innings was really important. The technique looked up to it. I think McKenzie stands out more for long term potential. Obviously, Hodge is almost 31 now. He's a great player, and there's something there. And then I think from Sinclair's perspective, didn't he look well and truly look the part with the bat? Obviously, probably already Test team of the year when it comes to celebrations. And his off, he showed some glimpses. I think his bowling, I just didn't really get to see enough of, being honest. But we know it spins in the Caribbean, so if he's able to land him on a length, he'll certainly be threatening. But no, I thought despite his miserly first class record on a small sample size, I thought Kirk McKenzie looked like a guy that can make runs at the top level against a hell of a good attack in both games as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He was the lone soldier, I suppose, in Adelaide with 51 in the first innings, and he was able to back it up at the Gabba. And some of his drives in this particular game at the Gabba were just absolutely extraordinary. He's got a good technique. He's easy on the eye, so certainly hope that he's able to bat at first drop for the Windies for the next few years. But I'm really bullish on Kevin Sinclair, and as you mentioned, 50 on debut with the bat, not a massive amount of opportunities with the ball. However, I don't see his career being as a frontline spinner. I probably see him moving up into that number 6, 7 sort of range, almost playing like a Jason Holder type of role in the side. And whether Jason Holder is able to get back into this test team after his declined to come on this tour to focus on T20 cricket in the lead up to the World Cup is going to be interesting. But yeah, I think Sinclair could go number 6, and then bowl some handy off spin. So Louis, a lot's been made of the performance of the West Indies, and they absolutely bossed this game at the Gabba after looking pretty ordinary at the Adelaide Oval, if we're being perfectly honest. But are you concerned about Australia? I was listening to Jared Waitley on SEN earlier today, and he said that Australia have just been kind of in this cruise control sort of manner. No one in the top 4 has dominated this summer. The only person who's been able to get a century in the top 4 is David Warner, and he's no longer part of this team. And Travis Head's obviously had a very indifferent series with 119 at Adelaide, but followed by, two a king pair at the Gabba. So, how do you assess the Australian batting performances this summer against the West Indies, but also against Pakistan too?
Yeah, look across the course of that, and we'll put David Warner to one side. Obviously, he's had his farewell, and that's not really relevant going forward. But look, I think if we're going to go with a double-headed monster of Head and Marsh at 5 or 6, with the idea they're going to come out and play their shots, and I think they're both 100% the right people to be in those positions. You'd really like to see some more stability out of the top 4 as far as getting us out of trouble at 4 for 60 or 4 for 150 is not is something that both Travis and Mitch can do. But if you're asking your enforcers to constantly come in trouble, they are going to get out cheaply sometimes, and you are going to leave yourself vulnerable. To me, the biggest concern I actually have at the moment is Marnus. I think Uzi's been consistent enough, including with the runs here at the Gabba. Is he peak Uzi as far as fluency? No, but it's certainly there, and I certainly think he's been playing pretty well. I think Smith, this could be the turning of the page for him with this innings, and obviously he was not great against Pakistan. He really lacked fluency, and then Cam Green, right? It's difficult with him because he kind of shows us enough to consistently keep us interested, including in the second innings here. I think out of fairness, he should get both tests in New Zealand to kind of keep showing he's worth it. But at the end of the day, we can't function if Marnus and Green aren't scoring runs, and that's our 3 and our 4. So one of those two needs to come good, or if not, we might have to really consider some other options.
Yeah, it's concerning for Australia, but at the same time, I am not panicking about the way that this side is operating. The fact is, the fast bowlers have been superb, and Nathan Lyon's been pretty good this summer as well. Hazelwood has certainly been the standout of the quicks this summer. Cummins obviously did really well against Pakistan, but Hazelwood throughout the summer has been extremely consistent. So we've been very lucky that we've been so fortunate to have 4 blokes who have taken over 250 test wickets each in this lineup. But at the same time, we can't rely on the quicks and Nathan Lyon to continuously get us out of trouble. And um, I think Australia do need to persist with Smith opening and Cameron Green at number 4 for this series in New Zealand. But when it comes time for that Indian Test series, next summer, if that's not working, there needs to be a bit of change because I think Australian fans would riot if India were able to win 3 consecutive Test series on home soil. So, yeah, it's certainly something to be concerned about. Louis, I just did want to ask you about the form of Alex Carey in particular. How did you see his his summer. Obviously, was able to score a pretty important 60 odd in the first innings at the Gabba. But how do you assess his summer?
Look, Kez has been an interesting spot as far as whilst we've had a good summer as a team, we've obviously not batted all that well. So he's actually come in a lot of situations where, you know, both it's an opportunity for him to score runs, but also more challenging than perhaps where a lot of wicket keepers are used to coming in, which is 5 for 300, trying to put the foot down. So from my perspective, he's been kind of he's who he is, I guess, to this extent. Alex Carey is a good but not elite level Test wicketkeeper batsman, and you're going to get those kind of scores. I mean, if you look, the 53 in Melbourne against Pakistan was definitely crucial. The 65 there, obviously against the West Indies, he chipped in with some runs as well. I think in Sydney, and his 15 Adelaide was it was there at an important time for us to make runs. I think the reality is if Alex Carey, I think, is going to be just a very middling wicket batsman, which is something in Australia we haven't tolerated, weirdly enough. But if he averages kind of above 30, below 35, can score at a good pace and is clean with the gloves, I think that's a positive result if you look at what most other teams expect out of their wicketkeeper batsman.
Yeah, I think you sum it up pretty well, mate. I just wanted to quickly touch on the New Zealand series that's coming up. It's going to be a really good test for our batsmen. I think our quicks are really going to enjoy the conditions in New Zealand, and based on what we've seen in New Zealand in the past, the wickets are going to be quite spicy, which will certainly suit our quicks. But would you envisage any squad changes heading to New Zealand, or do you feel like it's a pretty settled lineup at this point in time?
The difficult thing is they need to. There will be additions to the squad. I think bowling wise is fine. They'll take Lance Morris or Jai Richardson depending on fitness and the like. Scott Boland will obviously be around, and then they'll if they take a second spinner, it will probably be Murphy, potentially Swepson. I think bowling wise they're happy with their options. The concern for me is there does need to be a middle order guy to go up. They'll take a spare opening batsman. It's really tough when you look around and figure out who that middle order guy might be. McSweeney's obviously been scoring runs by Webster, but he's on the older side of what we look at. And that to me is the biggest point of concern. Ollie Davies is probably a bit raw. But we need an extra backup for a guy that can bat anywhere from 3 through 6. And at the moment, Sheffield Shield isn't really presenting that, despite the fact that I'm sure that they'll take one of Renshaw, Bancroft, and Harris over as opening batting cover.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm quite concerned about the depth in Australian batting. And obviously, we've got a few guys at the top who could probably come in and do the job. All of them have had opportunities at Test level in the past. But I certainly think that developing some middle order batsmen is probably the next thing for this Australian team. And, Peter Handscomb was on that Indian tour, you know, pretty much 12 months ago and hasn't really been seen since around the international setup. So that's something to ponder in the future as this team, begins to age a little bit more. But Louis, just wanted to say a big thank you for jumping on the podcast to talk about the Australian and West Indies series. It will obviously be good to chat with you about the India and England test match very shortly.
Been a pleasure, Callum. Thanks.
Thank you so much for tuning in to In the Court, and make sure that you follow all of our social media pages, and we'll see you on the next video. Cheers.